The merchants and traders were scared that they'd lose their jobs, but Arel granted that only the signboard be changed, while the rest, including framework and existing employees, remained the same. And as for our friends at the Holy Kingdom, Geotal had admitted to bribing and selling contraband items to Pelzen. He tries to put the blame on the Arnesian Kingdom, and Nelvenia admits that their relationship isn't the best, but that has nothing to do with his crimes. He then realizes that it was her plan all along to eliminate him, and screams as the guards drag him away. He really was a yelling priest till the very end. Nelvenia walks away satisfied. His uncle would have a lot to do, but at least the prince had a crew and a boat now. Chocolate is also selling quite well, so maybe he should think about selling to other countries. The prince wonders this while he grants Saintess Nelvenia an audience. The prince didn't expect that she'd come to see him in person. During the Geotal incident, they had secretly exchanged letters and information, leading to them eliminating the people they wanted to. Geotal and the priest. The prince thought there would be no more contact between them after that. But here she is, stuffing her face with chocolate. He asks whether it's okay for her to be here, and she replies that it's fine as long as she doesn't get caught. He then reminds her that this is his territory, but she assures him that she could escape anytime she pleases. He notes that she's full of confidence, but then again, she is a saintess. She had come to clear up the misunderstanding herself and explain that what happened was entirely due to her priest's deviation and didn't reflect her intentions whatsoever. The prince jokingly tells her to then allow him to sell his artificial holy water, but she still refuses. She had come to meet face-to-face with the famous Arel and Erzia. She reveals that she didn't want to make enemies right now and has taken import into consideration. The prince understands that she doesn't want to be enemies with him, but also doesn't want to be BFFs. He thinks it's because of their mutual dislike for non-human species, as that can be covered up, but she assures him that's not the reason. She just doesn't have any intention of fighting him now. She then takes her leave and disappears. The prince notes that it's different from teleportation. Maybe it's her exclusive ability. He has this feeling that something annoying is about to happen. What a drag. He hopes that the childish saintess doesn't do something foolish. Micah Jacineville, a member of the 16th Order of Knights, is exhausted. The work she's doing isn't even completely hers to begin with. It is for her captain, Lady Cania. She reckons that her captain isn't a bad person but is just easily distracted. Had she known this was how her life was going to be, she would have remained in the countryside. She remembers how she had been recommended to a new order, under the second princess. She had already admired her, and since Cania's order consisted only of women, offers were sent to even the far corners of the kingdom where she stayed. She was stoked to be working under Cania, but now she really just wants to unalive herself. As she's still contemplating, Cania bursts in, almost breaking the door. She scolds her for it and tells her that the prince even sent his sympathy. Cania believes she can hear the prince nagging in her. Micah then tells her to go through the documents she had organized for her, and Cania does so immediately. Micah thinks that she might still be upset from losing a battle with a swordmaster she had challenged. After the battle, the man told her he had only won because of experience, but she had lost, through and through. She wasn't broken though, and still vowed to challenge him again. The reason she was so obsessed with winning was because of the vow she made to her dad, the king. Before her order could be recognized, she must first be recognized for her skill, and one of the ways to get recognized is to win against another swordmaster of the same level. Meika then realizes that if her captain keeps losing, their order will also disappear. She really doesn't want that to happen. Even though she complains a lot, it's not that bad. She decides that she must do something for her captain's sake. This prince goes full noble mode on her. What in hell gave her the audacity to meet him in person? Meika scrambles around, saying that she came for Lady Cania's sake. But our boy's only messing with her. He could never be that serious with anyone. He then becomes anxious as he inquires if his sister had done anything wrong. She then tells him the full story and the deal with his big sis. She had come to him for advice because she was worried about his sister. She complains that if things continue like this, she won't be able to work properly as she was working overtime a lot, and it was killing her. She pleads with him to tell her what to do. After some thought, the prince reveals that he can't help her. He can only give his sister advice if she asks for it herself. Seeing the disappointed look on her face, he decides not to send her back with nothing. He gives her a letter to his sister but with the severe warning that only Sena could open it, as a spell had been placed on it. At Sena's training ground she lays on the ground, exhausted from training. She then reminisces about her battle with the swordsmaster. During the battle she had noticed that he was blocking her attacks without breaking a single sweat. She then decided to change her tactics of looking for an opening and just attack with force. Her opponent commended her swordsmanship, but still found an opening and landed a critical hit. Lord Manel and she were in the same realm, but because of his experience, she could never beat him. In the midst of her thoughts, Micah interrupts her with a letter from her brother containing information on how to defeat her opponent. She believes that with that information, they will be able to get their recognition. She is then interrupted by a flick to the forehead from Kania. She asks her if she went to him first because she knew that her brother would never send this. She discourages her and tells her that this wasn't the way. If she beat Lord Menel like this, she would be setting limits for herself. Micah is genuinely impressed by her hero, but Sana couldn't see it. She then promises her most faithful soldier that she would win, with a smile. She goes on to continue training, but Micah, however, is still curious as to what's in the letter. Not long after that, Kania walks up to challenge Lord Menel once again. He's surprised, but our princess isn't planning on giving up anytime soon. He agrees to spar with her but notices that she brought a different weapon this time. It's the short sword her little brother had given her before the war. The battle begins. With the help of her sword, she closes the distance between them in mere seconds. He narrowly escapes it. He can't let his guard down, so he decides to take this seriously. Kania is surprised that he wasn't fighting with everything before, as he starts raining down attacks on her that she barely misses. He reckons that since his attacks rely on stabbing, the princess must have thought she could counter it by getting close. But unfortunately for her, he can read her movement. As he is still thinking, he realizes that his opponent is now in the air. Kania uses all the power she could gather and gives her opponent a critical headbutt that sends him to the ground. Meika and the other spectators could not believe their eyes. Was that even allowed? But in truth she had won. She tells him that she bet he had never expected a headbutt from a knight, and the lord burst out laughing. He also believes that fighting fair and square on a battlefield was nonsense. They shake on it, and Lord Menel, as promised, acknowledges her as a knight. As she freshens up, Meika congratulates her on her victory. She's still not satisfied though, as she feels that the lord had gone easy on her. She then inquires about the letter her brother, the prince, had sent. Since her match had finally ended, it didn't matter anymore. Meika then reveals to her that she had checked, and there was nothing there. Just a blank paper. Not even the magic that was supposed to seal it for her. Meika pleads with her to not be upset, but she isn't, because she knows that her brother sent it to her on purpose. She's already looking forward to her next match, but Meika reminds her of the piles of delayed work waiting for her. So as it turns out, the prince is actually quite friendly with Lord Menel. He brings Dia to help heal the poor old man's aching body. He's grateful and apologizes, just like his father did, for putting him through so much. The prince expresses how, if his sister wasn't recognized by Lord Menel, other knights would look down on her. Lord Menel inquires if he gave her any help, but our prince answers that he didn't. Although her adjutant came to him, he didn't contribute in any way. Everything that happened during the battle was totally her own doing. Lord Menel admits that he had a great time verifying her, and that ends the matter of his sister and her sword. Now, the prince says he wants to go talk business, and Lord Menel wonders what he means by that. He has a scary idea though. The prince walks into the room where his father, the king, and his brother, the first prince and heir, are seated, and tells them point blank that they need to prepare for war. He reveals that although the previous war has ended, danger still lurks in the kingdom. The king notes that he isn't talking about simple preparation, and he's right, for our genius protagonist thinks that they should strike first this time. The first prince is irritated by the thought of starting a war, but the prince argues with him, saying that signs of a war are already brewing, and if he didn't want a repeat of last time, they had to strike first. This war is coming, whether they strike first or not. He isn't too keen on killing, but at least this way they'd reduce casualties on their side to the bare minimum. He also promises to design all necessary equipment and ends it there. After an intense silence, the king asks what Jael was going to do, as he was to lead the kingdom from now on. Arel also expresses his willingness to follow him as well. The first prince requests some time to think about it, and then leaves. The king tells Arel that they need to have some father-son bonding, but over politics and war matters, and he agrees too, for he had not wanted to take such drastic measures either. The king then reminds him about Pena and his decision to accommodate her, and Arel agrees. He then asks if this war decision was left for him, what he would do. The king bluntly replies that he would never start a war, and the prince understands. But Prince Jael decides the opposite. They will prepare for war, but only if someone obviously shows visible hostile actions toward the kingdom. He tells Arel that he would accept no violations from him, and our boy complies. He then asks his brother to tell him who he is wary of, and Prince Arel suspects the Holy Kingdom, and has reason to believe that they'd invade in the next 5 years. After his investigations, the possibility of war became apparent. He wasn't planning on attacking first, but he wasn't going to sit and wait around either. This preparation was just in case. At the Holy Kingdom, the Saintess lies on her bed, obviously exhausted, and reminisces about the discussion she had. She has warned her people not to antagonize the Enerzian kingdom for now. Someone asked if they were going to evangelize them, which was fancy Holy Kingdom language for invading another nation. She told them that they had no chance of winning if they started a war now. They had to be cautious, and although leaving them be would only give them time to grow, they had no choice. She reckons that she'd have to resort to a troublesome move as she holds up a shady-looking bottle in her hands, slow and steady for the sake of their holy nation. Meanwhile, Pina finally arrived at Fahilha, and Arel is already waiting to welcome her. She never thought they'd meet again this way. He was now in charge of her extradition. Of the only 3 royal family children, Pina is the second child and first princess. She had thought the weather was brutal, but once she entered the city, she was surprised. The prince ushers her in so that they can discuss further. Her elder brother had inherited the throne, and her sister is still a kid. She, on the other hand, came here as a hostage, under the pretext of studying abroad. But the prince reckons that despite her situation, she still remained carefree. He offers her some snacks and asks about her welfare. She responds that she has been living comfortably, although the prince notes bitterness in her tone. As she goes on to compliment his city, the prince beckons her to stop pretending. He hadn't forgotten about their little incident back at the palace. She tries to deny it, so the prince playfully threatens to announce her secret to the whole city. Then she folds. Unfortunately for her, our boy isn't someone they can sway with smiles. She tells him to also stop pretending, and he is delighted to. He tells her to show him her spirit, but she's worried about confidentiality. The prince assures her that they are all good at keeping secrets. He notes that for some reason, she is really conscious about privacy. She then summons it, and the cute little salamander pops out of thin air. She had been practicing and managed to tame it a bit, and our prince is impressed. He then inquires about the confusing letter she sent him through her lizard, claiming that he could teach high-level spiritual arts. She doesn't deny it and admits that at some point, she had started hearing the spirit words. The prince reckons that, although summoning spirits wasn't rare, it was difficult to communicate with them, even for a pro like himself. He asks her what happened exactly, and she explains that she heard numerous voices. But the lizard told her to come to him. The prince is surprised that it mentioned him directly, and wonders if the spirits could see through his identity. As a man living his 101st life, he wonders how the spirit, who only recognizes fundamental essence, views someone like him. Spiritual magic is a lost art. But he agrees to teach her as much as he can, and from there, a new bond is formed between the princess of the empire and the third prince of the kingdom. Sena, Asha, and Dia are having fun gossiping about the prince and his new female friend. Their relationship seems quite casual, and Sena reveals that they actually met during the prince's visit to the palace to find a marriage proposal. These are just female lovesick delusions, as the prince had just been keeping a close eye on her because of her spiritualism. After the tour of the castle, it is time for Arel's special spiritual lessons with Pena. He flips through a book on spirits, and then tosses it out immediately, with the reason that it was too old. He decides to go with the old-school style and teach her by demonstrating. In order to summon a spirit, she must make a contract. Only then can they manifest enough for other people to see them. Although a contract is just a fancy term, unless for high-ranking spirits, a simple nod could do the trick. The most important thing to have is infinity, not that you can't summon without it. He demonstrates this by pulling out a spirit stone, placing it in a circle, speaking some words, and poof, a spirit appears. It isn't really a complete spirit but more like a limb of one, but he just wanted to prove to her that anyone could do it as long as they had the right medium, which was very rare and expensive. The technique is also complicated, and communication is difficult. The existence of spiritualists had not even been confirmed for over 200 years, because magic just became more efficient over the years. This didn't imply that spirit arts were inferior though. His goal today is to make her familiar with summoning. He then asked her to try it out, and she does exactly as he did earlier, repeating the same words but without a medium. Poof, another spirit appears. It's an earth gnome, so cute that he almost seems edible. Pina is excited that she had done it on her first try. The prince can't understand what the cute being is saying, but Pina can. She then puts out her hand and it hugs it. And just like that, a simple contract is formed. The prince is surprised that she is able to form contracts with 2 spirits and jokes about the shock her brother would feel if he found out. This throws her off, but she agrees. The prince then confronts her with the fact that the reason she's hiding her spiritual affinity and can't be caught knowing the spirit arts by her empire is because she's afraid of the Holy Kingdom. Basically, the Holy Kingdom hates all non-human species and treats them as unholy. Of all of them, they hate the spirits the most. In fact, in ancient history, the Holy Kingdom always persecuted spiritualists and hunted them more cruelly than demons. Spirits, on the other hand, were sensitive to human malice, which is probably why they haven't been seen much in over 200 years. The empire had started accepting the doctrine of the church. Amidst all that, she is a member of the royal family, so that was one of the reasons she was sent here. She admits to it but tries to explain further, as that isn't the full story. Yes, her brother had already known about her talent, but she was also sent here for something else. The prince finishes her statement with the fact that she was sent here to give the Holy Kingdom a reason to punish the Inerzian kingdom. Nothing could get past our reincarnation pro, She is surprised that he already knew that. In truth, it was only a guess, but a correct one based on her reaction. The kingdom of Inerzion was once under the empire until the first king fought to make it independent. That is probably why they couldn't stand the kingdom's powerful existence. The emperor is now planning to use the excuse that the princess had been corrupted by the kingdom of Inerzion to give the Holy Kingdom a reason to attack. He asks whether the Holy Kingdom knows, but the magic which he had cast on her began to wear off. He had used suggestion magic to make her talk, and with that, he is able to deduce that she disagrees with her brother. She then reveals on her own that she didn't like the idea of her spirits being treated with malice. The prince reveals to her that if their plans come to fruition, she'd also be in trouble as a spiritualist. He then asks her if her reason for coming to him for help was also to use him as an excuse. She denies it, saying that she just didn't want to make any mistakes, also because she believed what her spirit said. The prince then inquires about her plan. The emperor didn't know about this, but she couldn't betray her empire as she was still part of the royal family. He then makes it clear to her that her cooperation would be beneficial to the empire, for it was well on its way to exploitation and ultimate destruction. The prince had already known that the Holy Kingdom planned to use the empire as a shield. He tells her the brutal truth, that her brother was dull and being manipulated. Pina is still undecided. The prince goes on to tell her that they couldn't win even if they joined hands and attacked his kingdom. The Holy Kingdom was planning to abandon them from the start. They planned to spark a war and easily run away if things went south. He officially promises the princess that he'll make sure that her empire doesn't get caught up in this war, as long as she agrees to cooperate with him. Pina then realizes that this was the reason he wanted her here from the start, but is confused as to why he chose her for this task. He then tells her that he believed her spiritual arts were the only weapon against the Saintess without starting a war. She couldn't believe that he was referring to the actual Saintess. She isn't really that loyal to the imperial family, and she definitely doesn't want her country to get caught up in a war. So the prince urges her to join him, so that he could prove that her spiritual arts are the way, and teach those who pushed her a lesson. He tells her to stop hiding, and that opens her eyes, as she agrees to follow our protagonist. The most important thing to have when performing spirit art is affinity. Although his personal affinity is low, due to his training, his mana is close to the natural attributes. He tries to remember the spell, but that's too much work. So he casually rips the Spirit Kings out from the circle he had drawn, one by one. Once he finally has all the attributes, he stops. The Fire Spirit King asks what gave him the audacity to casually rip out Spirit Kings forcefully like that. But before he could finish, our boy casts a magic chain that prevents them from using any of their attributes. The Fire Spirit assumes that he wants to form contracts with them. But nah, our boy wants nothing to do with those creatures. He just needs to ask them a question. He asks them what it means exactly when a spirit says that he can be trusted. The Fire Spirit doesn't seem to understand the question. Just then, he takes a good look at our MC's soul. And boy, is he terrified. The prince notes that he must look different in their eyes. The Light Spirit King behind says that it's been thousands of years, and even Dragon Lords weren't like this. That's how terrifying he looks to them. He notices that they aren't that surprised to see him, and they reveal that they had actually been one like him before, that existed about 1,000 years ago. Our pro already knows that they are other reincarnators, and he had come into contact with some of them in his previous lives. The Fire Spirit then reveals that the previous one wasn't really nice and forced them to use their power to destroy. You see, our boy has classified reincarnators into 3 groups: the lazy bones like him, the goody two-shoes that use their knowledge to help others, and the jerks that abuse power. This guy obviously falls into the latter group. The Fire Spirit Red suggests that maybe the lizard was just relieved to see his soul was good. After they tell him all they know, Red asks if he wants to form a pact, but the prince reminds them that he doesn't need their power. He warns them, though, to tell their descendants never to speak of him again. He then sends them packing but asks Red to appear if a certain summoner summons him. It gives him a medium that can summon at any time and disappears. The prince wonders what he would do with a ribbon. Pina has been practicing as her teacher instructed her. Prince Arel had told her to take one step at a time and keep working on familiarizing herself with summoning so that she could perform it at a moment's notice. She wonders why he was so focused on the basics but concludes that he just wanted to thoroughly train her in case of combat. The prince, who had been listening from behind the door, wonders why she's so serious when he had basically just told her to laze about and practice some summoning. Dia reckons that it was because of the fact that she was royalty and had been working since she was young. She had been talking about herself too. Anyway, the prince inquires about the engine he requested from the Magic Tower. After he had gotten ships from the Geotal Company, he made a request to get them to move without much manpower. Hellman had liked the idea, but at the same time feared that it might be dangerous. He proposed that it would have normally taken 3 months to stabilize, but now it would take 6 since the manpower at the Magic Tower had reduced due to them chasing dark mages. The prince is still okay with this. as it would have taken them 3 times that time to achieve. Those dumb dark magicians were still disturbing him though. Hellman had vowed to prioritize eradicating them before doing anything else. The prince isn't sure about this, but then again, it's none of his business. He tells Dia to tell him that he understands and will root for him. Now that all the business talk was settled, a break for our boy is overdue. He decides to bring Pina along this time, so he bursts into the room, grabs her, and takes her out on an outing. Their much-deserved break starts now. On their way, the prince tries making small talk, but she won't budge. Her progress was stagnating, and even though he tries to get her to relax, she still refuses. She complains that, as royalty, they shouldn't indignify themselves like this. The prince can't believe what he just heard. He is more determined than ever to get her to have some fun now. He takes her to a food stall and offers her roasted rabbit meat. She's obviously interested but can't lose her dignity. The prince persuades her, saying that she's a prisoner, not a princess here. With that, they both try the meat and openly criticize it in front of the heartbroken seller. Just then, a swift figure deliberately pushes her towards him. It's a pickpocket. The audacity of that human, committing a crime in his city. The guards could have easily handled him, but our boy decides to use this as a practical training opportunity for his student. He tells her to take care of it, and she summons her spirits and uses them to trap her target in hard mud, solidifying the earth with her earth gnome and hardening it with the salamander. The prince commends her ability, but advises her to use more threatening means to trap her enemies. In response to that, she sets the poor pickpocket on fire, and although her flames aren't that hot, the prince can still smell burnt steak. He had told her to trap him, not cremate the dude alive. That was too much. The people around think that it's some kind of street performance, and the thief is handed over to the guards. At the bookstore, the prince notices that Pina is more familiar with books than fun, and she herself notices that most of the books were made of quality paper. She then finds a shiny book, and our teenage protagonist, who had been distracted by a dirty rated 18 book, tries to stop her, but he's too late. He just wants the earth to open up and swallow him whole as she reads out the great deeds of the Grey Wise Sage, Prince Arel. The book was meant to popularize him and his city, but he's dying of cringe just hearing what was written. Pina then notices that the writing in the book is uniform, and the prince commends her for her sharp eyes. It is the result of his new machines that print words and pictures really quickly. She inquires about the reason behind it, but our prince shrugs it off. He couldn't tell all of his plans, not yet at least. They start making plans to call it a day. In the Holy Kingdom, we have yet another yelling priest. You'd think he'd learn from the last one. This time, he is yelling about a banned book that had been reproduced as a children's book, easy to read for even illiterates. Saintess Novenia urges the priest to calm down, for this was a sensitive matter. As a solution, she'd ban this book as well, but her major problem is that it is from the kingdom of Inertia. She wonders what Arel's reasons were. I guess we now know what those printing machines were for. She tells them to tell their allies not to bring the book into the church. A priest then inquires how long they'd have to hold their breath. The congregation is getting impatient, and so are they. To calm them down, she decides to give them a clear answer. She tells them that she had finally gotten a divine revelation, and this gets them excited, but she tells them that the information was extremely private, and makes them swear to secrecy. After that, she reveals some sort of secret information that gives them some sort of morale. What the hell is she scheming now? After some time, there is celebration in the kingdom of Arnesia. Our pro, who's now 18, sits back and proudly watches his big brother get crowned as the newest king of Inertia. He reckons that his brother should hurry up and become a wise king, so as to divert all attention from him. He would do everything in his power to support him behind the scenes and make sure that happens. All for the sake of his peaceful life. He wishes the peace they felt would continue. Unfortunately, we don't always get what we wish for. Our MC is chilling on the open green fields, wondering what Saintess Nelvenia was plotting. Meanwhile, Pina is practicing beside him, and he asks her why she keeps summoning and contracting lesser spirits when she could make pacts with intermediate-level spirits now, but is disappointed when he finds out it was solely because of their cuteness. Pina is now stronger, being able to summon up to 100 lesser spirits at once. She commands her spirit army of cuteness to attack, and the prince notices that she chose quantity over quality. Unfortunately, that's not enough, as her sparring partner Dia easily counters it with her own fire magic. Dia tells her that she lacked control, as there was a gap in her formation. The prince hadn't expected Pina to win, since Dia is on par with a 7th-class magician, whilst Pina is better than some 6th-class magicians. He advises her to read military books and work on leading spirit units. He then tells them to spar one more time as he contemplates taking a nap, because he couldn't come up with an answer as to what the Holy Kingdom was planning. Meanwhile, during the training match, Pina inquires about Dia's background and how they must be proud to see her as strong as this. But Dia reveals a gloomy and sad truth. Her entire hometown was wiped out by a pandemic. Pina immediately apologizes, and the prince is impressed by her humility. He reckons how Daya's story was unfortunate, and just then a thought strikes his mind. Pandemic? He then rushes out and tells them not to wait for him, as he had a sudden important task to do. There is one thing that can still destroy a kingdom as great as his, a pandemic. He asks the librarian if all the records had been restored as he walks into the historical library. He then asks him to bring him all records concerning the war between the Inertian Kingdom and the Holy Kingdom, as well as other nations. The prince really hates analogues. He had been researching till dusk and managed to find something. It was a record of the war between the Holy Kingdom and the Kingdom of Hisel that no longer existed. The Holy Kingdom had started the war, and Hisel was strong at the beginning, at least until a plague spread throughout and caused its borders to collapse. The war, together with the plague, was too much for them to handle. The prince reckons that all this was very suspicious. The flow of events was way too smooth, and the Holy Kingdom offered their help just after. The Hisel Kingdom was later destroyed and was forced to join the Mirman Empire. Yep, that settles it. Our boy has to do something. Later, he asks Dia to help him make medicine. Making medicine is tricky, for a mistake could lead to devastating side effects, just as much as it could save lives. It must be considered carefully, but our boy can't just fold his arms when he knows the Holy Kingdom's plans. Dia understands but is worried about the difficulties. Our protagonist was never planning on making it from scratch. He already has all the basic materials they need, and has already designed an emergency medicine, just in case. It was something he had accounted for when he was freshly transferred to Fahilha. Along with his private room, he also had a lab where he could develop drugs at any time. As for the name of the emergency drug, he calls it antibiotics. He then contacts Damon to start mass-producing them. Dia is confused as to why he called her for a task that's obviously for an alchemist, but he has something else in store for her. He hands her some paper, and after flicking through them, she's shocked at what she's looking at. He tells her to master the technique, but she questions its necessity. He tells her that it's for the worst-case scenario. He orders her not to tell anyone or use the mono-nanoparticle controlling technique without his permission. It is unorthodox, but she promises to live up to his expectations. While the alchemists were busy mass-producing his medicine, and Dia was working hard on mastering the technique, Hellman sent word that he had finished with the engine, which means it is time for a jolly cruise. Asha and Sena are so astonished at how big the sea is. Around the kingdom of Arnesia are just mountains and rocks, so they had never seen the sea before. They are now in the Felsen Kingdom, which served as a trading port for different ships from different countries, of which their company had finally joined. When Asha and Sena see ships, they are dazzled, as it's also a first for them. They are gaping so hard that they start to embarrass the prince a little, and gape even more when their own ride arrives. Pfizer Sky No. One stands majestically as she graces the port with her presence. Aiken and the rest had really outdone themselves this time. Sena noticed that it didn't have any sails, and the prince told her that she'd see why. Just then, Hellman casually drops in via teleport. He came alone, as all the other mages were busy with our old pals, the Dark Mages. Our prince notes that the technique used to make the ship's engine was invented by the Lord of the Magic Tower himself. He could feel the blood and tears of the overworked mages that worked on the ship. Mercy on their souls. Now that they are complete, it is time to take the ship for a joyride. The ship sailed the seas efficiently. She is a one-of-a-kind vessel made of iron, using a magic engine and weighing over 9,000 tons. Asha's face is pale and she's sweating all over. Our MC rushes over to her side, worrying that she might have motion sickness. But in truth, she is just getting PTSD. According to her, her grandpa, who was an explorer, got caught one day by a kraken and ended up stranded on a deserted island. He then used that story to scare her when she was still a kid. The prince then urges her to look at the beautiful scenery to distract her, and the scenery is quite beautiful indeed. Hellman deducts that this ship alone would be able to carry as much as the entire Giotto Company fleet, and our protagonist was planning on adding 3 more. As they both dialogue on the profits they were going to make, Sena spots something, a kraken. Hellman sees it, and the prince confirms it. Meanwhile, Asha screams her brains out. It's quite common to see krakens and other sea monsters while out at sea. The mariner suggests that if they turn around now, they could escape from it, as it was only warning them. Even if it does follow them, they could always throw some food its way to distract it. That's nice and all, but our reincarnation expert has a better idea. Slamming the ship into the kraken with full speed like a bowling ball to bowling pins. Asha looks like she's seen a ghost. The prince needed to test the boat's durability, and plus, what gave that dumb kraken the audacity to stand in his way? Asha has completely lost it while they prepare to make an impact. The boat then slams into an unsuspecting kraken and boom, it really is like a bowling ball and bowling pins. As everyone begins to recover, well, everyone except for Asha, who had already gone to have tea with her creator. The kraken is in pieces, and that's all the proof our boy needs to conclude that the ship was highly resistant to monster attacks and reefs. They call it a day and end their sea trial. After that, the prince tells his crewmates to look for his precious cocoa fruit as they go to discover the southern continent. It won't be long until he can make his precious cola, and the thought alone has him even more mouth-watering than when he made chocolate. The official reason for his Ernesian expedition squad is to make contact and build relationships with the southern continent. No one would ever know that the main reason was for his selfish greed and need for cola. It would be one of the many secrets he'd be carrying to the grave. Meanwhile, at a certain village on the outskirts of the Ernesian kingdom, people are falling sick left and right. There is trouble. The prince ponders over how so many people had begun showing signs of fever throughout the kingdom. Asha reports that the royal kingdom had released an official document confirming an infectious disease. The prince didn't expect it to come or spread this fast. He asks if her and Seina's hometowns were safe, and they confirm it. Although Seina's region was affected, her village was the only one that was safe. He wonders if it has something to do with her bloodline. He orders them to close the gates and restrict access. He is devastated to think that all business and transportation could be ceased so easily. He orders them to handle it using the medicine they had prepared. They are to put all other operations on hold and focus on eliminating the pandemic. Antibiotics can't solve everything, but luckily, healing magic exists in this era. He commands his mages to ask Helman for help if they lack manpower. Looking at the reports, Prince Arel notes that the disease was spreading way faster than it should. He is sure that Nelvenia is secretly behind all this. Just then, Dia knocks and comes in with a question for her master. She asks if this disease was man-made. She had felt, while healing with magic, that she was familiar with the disease. As it turns out, it was the same disease that wiped out her hometown. She could never forget the plague that killed her friends and family. She asks again, and he nods, confirming it. Meanwhile, Pina was secretly listening in on their conversation. With that, she leaves him alone. But before she does, the prince promises to get back at the person who did this. The prince goes to visit the sick, barren, and abandoned lands where the disease first spread with Dia. The Lord warns them to be careful, but he has a magic quarantine tool in hand. He advises him to go, but he couldn't, as that was his territory. Our boy complies. After all, the person who really needs to go is Pina, who is hiding in a crate on the carriage that had come in. She apologizes for following them, but she couldn't just sit back, especially after hearing Dia's story. She then shows him her newly contracted spirit that could use simple healing. Since they were in a rush already, the prince reluctantly agrees to allow her to follow them. He asks if the village has taken any measures, but the Lord replies negatively. The original plan was to burn the village, since they didn't know what disease they were dealing with. He commands Dia, and she begins to cast a spell. He tells a surprised Lord that if this goes well, they might not have to burn the village after all. Dia is casting the Mana Nanoparticle Control spell, and it is removing viruses from the atmosphere. Our pro was basically cheating, but he had no choice. After all that, he uses a test paper to test the effect, and to the truth, all viruses had disappeared. Dia is exhausted after casting, because casting the spell on a whole village is mentally exhausting. The Lord was overjoyed, but the prince tells him not to celebrate yet, as the work wasn't completely over. They then begin restoring the village, treating the sick, and giving vaccines. Soon, the high mortality sickness that threatened the kingdom is stopped in its tracks by our Reincarnation Pro and his companions. And a certain little Sanctus is very not happy about it. The Sanctus couldn't believe that the number of deaths was less than 100 from a pandemic the kingdom of Inertia shouldn't have been able to avoid. After testing it in a certain village, she had verified that the disease worked well. She suspects it was the doing of a certain gray-haired prince and is furious. She needs to move on to the next plan as soon as possible. She plans to use a nation, which is also on her target list, to destroy the kingdom of Inertia. She couldn't guarantee that she'd ever be this lucky again. For the sake of the children of the Holy Kingdom, those dumb priests are confused and start doubting the Saintess, as the Inertian kingdom stood untouched. In his carriage with Pina, our prince is glad that the epidemic had started coming down. Pina is about to tell him something but decides against it. They arrive at Fahilha. Even though the prince had ignored her for some time, Pina still seems like a good girl. He reckons that maybe it has something to do with the secret letters she has been receiving. He didn't see any harm, so he allowed her to exchange letters with the Empire. After all, she was technically in the kingdom studying abroad, so sending letters would be perceived as normal. He wonders what she's actually hiding. Pina, on the other hand, just received another secret letter from her brother. The Empire took advantage of the fact that exchanging letters was normal, and sent encoded messages that could only be seen using the blood of the receiver. He tells her that he has heard that she moved to stay with the third prince. That was an achievement for someone as dull as her. He obviously doesn't know that her secret has been exposed to the prince and is even learning under him. His hate for the Inertian kingdom is also growing stronger, as the influence of his wife Raminia from the Holy Kingdom deepens. He warns her about exposing her talent, and she wonders why he despises her ability so much. She remembers the look on his face when she first discovered her power. As she reads, she discovers something shocking and rushes out to meet Prince Arel. Once she finds the startled Prince Arel, she hands over the secret letter to him. Our protagonist feels awkward reading another person's letter, especially a secret encoded one. But once he reads it, he's just as shocked as she is. The Emperor of the Mirman Empire, her brother, is willing to sell his people as low-priced slave soldiers.